Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for Apple and Skydance Animation's Luck. Keep calm and leprechaun. Top of the morning to ya. My name is Nathaniel, and this is our spoiler-free review for Apple and Skydance Animation's Luck. I can do that because I am Irish. Special thanks, as always, to all the lucky people at Apple for giving us the opportunity to watch this movie early. Before we get started, if you are joining us for the first time, we are Geekcentric, a podcast focusing on the world of movies, TV shows, games, toys, and collectibles, and all things Geekcentric. Lucky enough for me, I'm not alone on this review. Joining me for this one, he's like a jubilant jam jar of just joyous jollification. He's Justin, the giant leprechaun Lawrence.
Yes, I am a giant leprechaun. I would be walking around like a giant in that place. How many J's was that? You got just crammed into that name?
I got a bunch. I thought I was doing pretty good there. Not as many times as I'm probably going to say the word luck or lucky in this in this review, but definitely a lot of J's. And listen, you just heard her letting out a joyous, jubilant laugh. We've got, for her first official spoiler-free review with us on the podcast, someone who could break a mirror magnificently, meanwhile manifesting a mystic money mountain. She's our own Megan Moonstone Clara.
Wow, Moonstone.
I was trying to think of like a lucky thing. I don't know. Sure. I was looking up. I literally looked up like M words and J words that are like to do with luck, and nothing came up. Nothing came up at all. So I just started making stuff up.
Rightfully so.
We're gonna make Moonstone a lucky thing.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, if you can't tell already, the movie we're reviewing here has a lot of objects in it that bring good luck. I wanted to ask both of you, do either of you have like an item or a trinket or a token that brings you good luck?
I don't know if my wife counts, but she's pretty much my lucky charm. So
yeah, like whenever you like buy like random, you know, because we get all these vinyls, right? So like if you bought like a random mystery box vinyl, she's the one choosing it?
Probably, yep. Or she's usually the one that chooses our lottery tickets that inevitably, they don't win us the lottery, but they get us forward. You know, we might win a free ticket here. There you know, so $10 here. So that's nice. I always say she's my lucky charm. She'd say the same thing about me, but that's the cheesy answer. Meg, how about you?
For me, actually, I have a couple of they're green quartz crystals in my purse. That sounds so hippy dippy of me, but it's true. And I find that if I'm not in a good mood or I'm out and about and things are just like not going my way and I reach into my purse and I feel them, it sort of makes me stop and take a breath and go, you know what? You can choose your attitude towards all these things. So if I'm in rush hour and there's people cutting me off or whatever, I can choose to say, you know what? If that person's in a hurry, I'm going to give them their space. I will get to where I need to be when I get there. All is well. And it's kind of a nice reminder to put things into perspective. So those are my little lucky charms.
I carry 2 buds of green all the time that change my perspective on
different
things,
kinds. So. I actually carry something. I carry something green with me as well. I actually have a lucky Yoda, a 1970s vintage Yoda figure that I actually carry with me, and I keep him with me whenever I'm traveling. And he seems to help me do more than do not. So I find that oftentimes he does work, and it's funny, you know, all of you sort of mentioning a different way to look at these items and the perspective they bring. And I think this movie does a really cool job of sort of hammering home and emphasizing that aspect about the ideas around luck. But before we shine our pennies, I'm going to give our listeners the rundown on the movie itself. From Apple Original Films and Skydance Animation comes the story of Sam Greenfield, the unluckiest person in the world, suddenly finding herself in the never-before-seen land of luck. she must unite with the magical creatures there to turn her luck around. The movie is directed by Peggy Holmes, written by Kiel Murray, and is produced by David Ellison, Dana Goldberg, David Eisenman, and fans of Pixar might recognize this last name here, John Lasseter. The movie has a wonderful cast as well, including Jane Fonda, Whoopi Goldberg, Flula Borg, Lil Ray Howery, Colin O'Donoghue, John Ratzenberger, again, another Pixar alum, and Adeline Spoon, as well as Simon Pegg as Bob the Black Cat, and Eva Noblezada as Sam. The movie will be available exclusively on Apple TV Plus on August 5th. So let's just get right to it. I think for me, the biggest highlight I noticed right away with this movie was the voice cast. I think the voice cast was killer. I think they all played their roles wonderfully for me, and I think I was instantly bought in right at the beginning of the movie. There's little girl named Hazel who's played by Adeline Spoon. And her little voice cracks. She says like a line. She's like, "Go for it, go for it" in the chorus or something. They're like filming a TikTok or something. And I was just like, okay, I'm gonna cry at some point in this movie because I mean, Boo in Monsters Inc. Like if you've got like a really cute kid in your movie, you got me in. Done. So adorable. What did you guys think of the cast in this movie?
Oh, they were fantastic. Simon Pegg is a favorite of mine in some of the previous works he's done that are not voice acting, so it was cool to see him in a role like that, and he was so fun to follow along with. I also loved, I'm sorry, I forget her name already, the main girl who was Sam Greenfield.
Yeah, Eva Noblezada.
She had a beautiful voice, perfect for voice acting. And I actually looked her up on IMDb, and she hasn't done a huge handful of things. She's done maybe a few movies or series, but she was fantastic. She did a wonderful, wonderful job.
I felt she was so she's such a heartwarming and like selfless character throughout the movie.
Yeah.
And like her voice it made it instantly believable. Like normally a character like that, you have to stretch your imagination or stretch your sense of reality to sort of be like, okay, that kind of person can exist. Unfortunately, even in a movie aimed at kids. But I think I loved seeing her challenge the bad luck she was faced with over and over again in the movie. She's got like a lot of spirit, a lot of like gusto, and yeah, also a phenomenal voice, but also phenomenal hair. Like I was like, how? Like she's the unluckiest person in the world, but look at her hair. Like it's gorgeous. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Eva Noblezada did a great job as Sam Greenfield because she had to carry this movie very much on her shoulders. Her character was definitely the defining character of this movie, along with Simon Pegg. I really liked Flula Borg. I thought,
oh my god,
fantastic.
So funny.
he was such a great addition. I wish there was more of him in the movie, especially him with Babe the Dragon, played by Jane Fonda, which I thought was really great to have. Again, the voice cast is probably the highlight of this movie. However, I don't know how many more highlights there are to this movie overall outside of that.
I mean, I will say it's funny because I think every time I sort of felt to what you're describing, Justin, of sort of like this sort of, the critic hat kind of pops on my head, and I start to look at the movie critically, even though, again, and we just talked about this with our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles review of like, we're how old, and we're reviewing, this cartoon that is aimed at a younger audience. But I think knowing the experience we've had with animation, I think that's some of the things that I start to take in as we're critically looking at these movies more and more is the better works that are out there. But I will say, when Flula Borg pops up as Jeff the Unicorn, and he's got a mullet and a mustache, and he's got all these Flula-isms that I just absolutely adore. I just mentioned in our previous This Week in Geek about how I watched both seasons of Centaur World, and he plays a Moltar, which is a mole centaur in that series, and it's the same thing. Like he's the same Flula, and it's so fantastic. Between those moments, or like John Ratzenberger is in this movie, and I'm not going to reveal who he plays. I'm going to keep that. For a little bit. But even when he is, like, I don't know if you're wondering where he's been in recent Pixar entries. He's been in the land of luck. So I will say, hearing his character felt like hearing an old friend again for the first time, and it kind of was just like lovely and gave me the warm fuzzies. And I think this movie, even a little bit beyond its voice cast, managed to do that a bunch of times. I think it's extremely original in its premise, in its world building, and especially in its characters, I think.
Yeah. One thing I thought was really sweet, and one of the big things I pulled out of the end of it was the story. Like, it's so hopeful and heartwarming, really joyful and silly at times. And I think it comes with a really grounded message that pretty much anybody of any age can relate to some point in this movie. And I thought it brought the idea of a chosen family home to a really sweet, like a sweet film. It really is aimed at like younger audiences, preteens, that sort of age group. So I think it did a really good job with that.
I think that's where I'm going to be the negative one here, because I think I think that's where it lost me. I think that it tries to do too much with its story, and there's so many great elements. Like, I love the story about the chosen family and how we're introduced to Sam and her relationship with Hazel and all of that. I wish we had stuck with that a lot more and had maybe that as the basis of Luck. This whole world building of Luck falls short for me. It feels like it's trying too hard to be like the worlds that we've already seen from other Pixar movies that have done it better, with less explaining, more visual interpretation. And, again, there's so much hand-holding and explanation that goes into this that I think, to define this world of Luck, that I think it actually loses kids. Like, I don't think it actually does speak to kids as much, because there's so much explaining that goes on. I think for kids, they might get a little confused and they might find some things to kind of cling to. But if you're more of like the teens or getting into the teens, I'm wondering if they're just going to think, really, at the end of the day, that this movie just is a lesser version of things that they already have seen, like Monsters, Inc. or Inside Out.
Well, I mean, this is brought to us from Kiel Murray, who has written on both Raya and Cars. And I think when I think about, some of my, maybe not with Cars so much because they have had 3 entries, but with Raya, one of my complaints with Raya was that we didn't get to spend enough time in the different parts of Kumandra and the different areas and all the sort of really inventive and creative parts of that world. And I get what you're saying, Justin. I did feel like this sort of had that as well. I just felt, though, like, again, the initial things they introduce in the movie are so I don't know, they're just so
they're Pixar-esque,
creative. Yes, they're Pixar-esque. Like, there's like, okay, I love the different creative jobs that all the creatures have. I love the way that they confidently just walk onto floating platforms because they're just always that lucky. And then I think one of the biggest highlights, but I get what you're saying, that kids could get a little lost here. Like, I love the different departments of good luck, like happy accidents or front row parking spot. Like, those are things that as an adult, I totally would connect with, right? And I think parents will connect with those parts as well. You're right. I think some of those really creative aspects that have to be explained throughout the movie might lose kids a little bit.
Absolutely. And I can totally understand, absolutely agree with you in the fact that there's so much exposition in this movie. It definitely lost me at some points. It felt really slow. It's just sort of like the cat explaining to Sam all these different reasons as to why they're doing a thing, or they walk up to an elevator and she's like, where does this go? And he has to explain as if you've never been there before. And you don't need all of that. You can do it sometimes, but as often as they did, it was annoying.
Look at something like Monsters, Inc., right? Like, when we were first introduced to that world, there was some explaining, but most of the movie, it was very digestive in the sense that we were able to take, okay, this is what this is like. This is what this is like, without necessarily having to have explaining. There was things that needed to be explained very quintessentially to the story. Here, everything seems to just be guided by Simon Pegg, who, in my opinion, is used more as an exposition tool rather than just being comedic. Like, there's some interesting parallels that they draw between him and Sam, but I think at the end of the day, the stories where it kind of lost me. And there was such potential. I think that the way it introduced the relationship of Sam and Hazel and the importance of, where she comes from and found family, that theme, I love that. I thought, oh, okay, this is cool. But then it just gets lost in this whole other story. And you get two worlds. You get luck and bad luck, but they don't really build out bad luck. Like what happened with that? Like you didn't really get any explanation to it or any definition to it. It was just there because if there is good luck, there's bad luck. It's just some things fell very short from even being fully fleshed out and explained. That I think, again, if you're a kid or if you're an adult, we deserve better. We deserve a more rounded, refined story that focuses on the characters rather than a necessity of world building just for the sake of it.
Yeah, like I agree with you, Megan. Like I think the moral is really strong. The found family, the fact that Sam comes from an orphanage, which I don't think is, overtly explored. Obviously, there's other stories with orphanages in them that we could name, but I think that. I think it's a really wonderful message to share with kids. And I think the message involving good and bad luck is really heartwarming. And I think they did manage to still pull off, telling that message, even if the overall story got a little lost in itself. I think it does sort of fall into the trap that I think a lot of animated movies aimed at kids do, and that's really a misbalanced use of its runtime. I think a lot of these kinds of movies, they do the thing where it's like we get to the last 30 minutes of the movie and then it's a rush to the finish. Like it's a rush to the finish, and we don't get to actually spend time in the resolution of the movie. And I obviously Pixar and DreamWorks, they're masters of doing this, and Skydance, they are not at the same pedigree. I think they would even admit that. So I feel like they kind of have to find a way to get out of the 30-minute rush to the finish sort of thing that a lot of these animated movies do. And I think, there's a section of the Land of Luck, the bad luck area, that they highlight, but they stay in for such a short period of time. It felt like those characters could have been explored and fleshed out more and meant something a little more than just the explanations that we kept getting from Bob.
Absolutely. And I'll also, just like coming from the world I'm in, talk about a technical aspect that they, in the world of animation, hit with all the creatures, in my opinion, but not so much with the human character, who was our main character.
Yeah.
Her expressions were not fleshed out well.
Yeah.
Her mouth didn't really move a lot, and her eyes didn't match what she was saying. Like the expression was quite weak. But the creatures, the bunnies, the cats, the pigs, the unicorn, the dragon were amazing. Like they had all of those, what you imagine Pixar creature characters to express, which are creatures in our real world, aside from unicorns and dragons, that don't make those kinds of expressions. So it's wild to me that animators now know how to express through pigs and cats and bunnies, but not through human beings. So that was one thing that I found really took me out of it, and like I couldn't take off my critic hat.
Right,
for sure, for that part, right? Yeah, because I think aesthetically, the animation is clean. It's very, at times it does feel very video game-esque in terms of the world building stuff, but the character design, it all felt very familiar to the things that we know and love from Pixar, Disney, the eyes, the sort of cuteness, the Sony animation style. It felt like a sort of hybrid of all of those styles mishmashed together to kind of help create its own look. But I totally agree. I think the creatures were treated with more attention to detail rather than Sam or even Hazel to a certain degree with the expressions. I
would even say, though, her face and her eyes are the weaker part of the animation. Her body did the movement and it did what it needed to do, and it was exaggerated the way you animate humans in an animated world. Our bodies don't bend that way, but when they make them bend that way, it's more an exaggerated movement. It's more exciting to watch. But in those moments of like face-to-face camera work when it's right up at their face and you don't see anything else. The only thing that's supposed to read is their facial expressions, and they didn't at all. Especially Hazel, her eyes were like huge and staring at Sam, but her mouth didn't really move a lot, and her eyes didn't really move a lot. Her eyebrows didn't do a lot of moving. It was just sort of flat, so it was hard to read expression, even if there's moments when they're either really happy or like really sad. Those emotions don't read to me.
And I will say, like, I'm myself personally, I'm not in the animation field. So by no means am I saying that it isn't incredibly difficult to make any of this stuff. I'm sure.
Me neither.
Sure it absolutely is. Right. No, and I'm not saying you are, but I'm just saying at this point, from all the movies we've watched and all the incredible animated films that we're so lucky to have watched and seen, and the different animation styles and different studios like consistently raising the bar on how good these movies look. I mean, Justin, you and I recently reviewed Netflix's The Sea Beast, and I think we discussed how just incredible that movie looked. But thinking back to it, beyond the universe and the world around it, the characters, the facial animations really did stand out, and I felt like, as imaginative as the Land of Luck was, it felt sometimes too clean. Sometimes it was a little too void of life. Megan, just before we started recording, we were talking about Pokemon, and even in the game, Pokemon Legends Arceus, if you've ever played it, we've got these very beautiful but open and almost too open lands where we see a lot of characters on screen, but a lot of them all look the same, right? And I felt the same way about this movie, where the creatures, yes, they were animated and looked really interesting, but a lot of them looked identical. And at no point in time, and don't get me wrong, again, I know that that's like apparently like that's a really difficult thing to do in the world of animation, is background characters and
crowds.
And crowds are very difficult and take a lot of work. But I think it was just one of those things where it's like, the world didn't feel as lived in as a place that you would imagine it would have. Like, if it's been here for all of eternity, it should have looked a little more like that. And I think I just felt like maybe that aspect of the movie was rushed from an animation standpoint. Maybe they really were like, well, listen, we'll tighten up the camera angles. We'll focus in on like maybe 3 characters at a time in the foreground, and then everyone else in the background can just be a copy of each other. Was a little disappointing because, again, you get to the Land of Luck and you're like, this place looks like idea-wise, it looks fantastic for what it's trying to do, and then you sort of look a little bit closer, and it's just not getting there.
Yeah, it's almost like when you first enter Zootopia, the expanse feels so exciting, but then it doesn't deliver. At least in this movie, it didn't deliver what I was expecting out of it. And with the crowds thing, you're totally right, Nate. It's a really difficult part of it, and we don't know what Skydance's budget was when they were making this movie, what their timeline was. Pixar has like 5 years to make a movie. Maybe Skydance had 2, so it's a little more difficult to get that stuff done in that short period of time. But I would even say, as a comparison, like you look at Frozen 1 and its crowds, and there's maybe 5 total characters that are just repeated throughout the background crowds.
Yep.
And then you look at Frozen 2, and there's like, cultural and ethnic diversity throughout their crowds, and they have like probably 25 or 30 characters that are copied a couple of times each to make the space filled. So, I think Skydance has been around, but not as long as Pixar, and they did what they could with a new animated movie, and given, John Lasseter's experience, but I think they have room to grow. Absolutely.
And I think, portions of the movie were done remotely during the pandemic, right? And so, I mean, we're still in the pandemic, but I hate saying during the pandemic. But no, I think part of me looks at that and says, okay, well, we can sort of look a little bit past that. I think, again, there's so many strong points to the movie, but do they outweigh the weaker points? And I think let's kind of get to our final thoughts for the movie, where maybe we can justify those thoughts. We're going to be rating this movie on a scale of 1 to 5 shiny lucky pennies. And Megan, we're going to actually start with yourself.
Absolutely. So with all of the, animation issues I had, I myself am not an animator either, and I know it's intense work, but I can't help compare to things that I've seen that are, a lot more experienced. So issues with the animation, the story took a long time to tell, but then didn't give enough reward, I guess, at the end.
There's the payoff. Yeah.
Yeah. But I still loved aspects of the story. I really related to Sam's character in certain aspects of her life as well. We've all been unlucky sometimes. And I think that was a fun part to relate to and to ground the story a little bit in this super fantastical world. So with all that said, I am going to give this a 3 out of 5 shiny lucky pennies.
Alrighty. Justin, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think this movie is okay. It's a cute kids movie that I think very young kids might connect to certain aspects, the more cutesy stuff, the more simple stuff. I do think, though, that it is a very convoluted story, that it struggles to kind of stick to what it's trying to say because it has so much going on, especially with everything going on with trying to build out this land of luck. I think a lot of people are going to watch this feeling like they've seen a version of this story or even just this idea of world building done better before. Everything about this movie looks and feels like it's trying way too hard to be something that it's not. There's certain aspects where we were just talking about the animation where it does look very clean, but also the world building aspects felt very video game-esque and a little, as Nate, you were saying, just a little too clean, a little too sterile, not lived in, very dull. And very much a knockoff of the worlds that we've known and loved from Pixar, like Monsters, Inc., Inside Out, or even Soul, for that matter. There's a heavy amount of exposition, as I was saying, and that only highlights the lack of clarity that this movie has around building a confident story and a confident world. Given that there's two sides to this world, the lucky side and the unlucky side, it seems as though they could have done a bit more at defining the bad luck. Rather than letting it sort of fall to the wayside. Again, just another example of a story that is not fleshed out and a lack of confidence in the story that is being told. It really does come down to this movie feels like it's emulating all the stuff that we've already seen on a scale that feels relatively low bar to Pixar, and by someone like John Lasseter who knows better. So I'm not really sure what he contributed to this. In the end, I think the target audience and all audiences deserve better. But, again, we talked about some pluses. I really enjoy how they introduced Sam and Hazel into the story. I wish Hazel had stuck around for more of the story. I wish that story had very much been a part of it rather than just getting a lucky penny, whatever it is. Again, all of this really just comes down to poor execution and a lack of focus on what the story's really about. I think, this is a great first outing for Skydance Animation and Apple to have this collaboration, but at the end of the day, it's trying way too hard to do universe building stuff on a Pixar level and not really sticking to a story that connects with the audience, which matters so much more than just building out a world. Again, another lesson to learn from Pixar. But that being said, if you have an Apple TV subscription, you'll definitely check it out. You'll watch with the kids, and I'm sure kids will enjoy it. But if you're like us and you're looking for a really heartfelt, impactful story like you might expect from other animated properties that you enjoy, I would not expect that from this movie. For that reason, I'm going to give this movie a 2 out of 5 shiny lucky pennies.
Wow.
Ouchie.
Yeah. Wow. I think, you know what? You mentioned, if you're older and you're mature like us, I think I might be a little less mature than both of you. Honestly, I have my complaints with the movie, but every time I put that critic hat on and I saw those aspects of the movie, something in it made me smile. Something in it made me giggle. Something in it made me laugh and feel a little bit of joy. And I get that we're comparing these to some of the heaviest hitters, but at the same time, again, and I think it's like right in our brains here with the Sea Beast being so recent. That is, not from a studio necessarily. It's Sony Animation, but it's like a subsection of Sony Animation, so it's not like your Spider-Verse or Mitchell's versus the Machines that we know can bring the heat. And so to see that studio sort of step up and deliver a movie like that, I think, though, again, where this movie finds there's a lot of problems with how it's like technically done. I still enjoyed it just as much, I think, for myself as I did with Sea Beast. I think I did really enjoy the creativity. I did think that the premise for the world was very original, even if they didn't manage to flesh it out as much as I wanted to. I thought the characters and the sort of the way they described luck was at a Pixar level quality, in the sense of like how they managed to deliver that sort of creativity of just like the different jobs that they do, and again, like the different the different sort of roles that luck has to play, and how they portrayed good and bad luck. I thought was just really inventive and fun, and I smiled a lot during the movie. I think it's one of the more delightful movies you'll watch this year. I do agree, though, that its lesser qualities do outweigh its strongest aspects, and I think it's just not going to quite get there. I struggle with my score on this. I want to give it a 3.5, but I think in the end, I think you guys might be a little more right on this. I think it is a 3 out of 5 shiny lucky pennies. As much as I really, really do think I enjoyed it a little more than both of you, I just think technically it's not bringing that, and maybe because I'm an adult, then I'm going to look at it that way a little more. So we're going to go with 3 out of 5 shiny lucky pennies. But that is it. We hope you enjoyed this spoiler-free review for Luck. And if you did and want to make sure to subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to podcasts, and if you want to write into the show, with your thoughts on the movie or any of the content we cover, Justin, can you let these lucky listeners know how they can reach us?
Why, of course. They can reach us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. Or if they're feeling extra lucky, they can reach out to us on Twitter at GeekcentricYT and on Instagram at WeAreGeekcentric.
They're getting lucky.
I'm surprised that Britney Spears' Lucky did not show up in this.
I mean, it almost did. We got a really dope
almost
dance number.
We got a musical number.
Yeah.
Again, they had to fit one in at some point.
Had to.
I really liked that moment. Had to
bring it back around.
I really liked that
moment. I know
moment.
you did.
It made me chuckle.
I think you meant to say you're probably more of a kid than you are mature, right? To enjoy this movie. Is that what you meant to say?
Probably. I don't know. I'm pretty immature. Keep in mind we have a ton of other great episodes covering the latest in movies and TV shows and games, including our spoiler-free review for Netflix's The Gray Man, as well as the Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie. We also have our spoiler-free review for Prey from Hulu and Disney Plus, which is a banger movie.
Not a kid's movie.
No, definitely not a kid's movie.
Not a kid's movie.
But
if you're listening to this, don't listen to that.
Yeah. And it's definitely not a Megan movie either. Megan, stay away. It's too scary. But it's fantastic. Keep an eye out as well, because we're going to have our spoiler-free review for Netflix and Neil Gaiman's The Sandman out real soon as well. Also, we've been incredibly lucky, very lucky, I would say. We're so lucky to I'm just gonna keep saying it, to interview some of the coolest people who work and make the things we love, like Obi-Wan Kenobi director Deborah Chow and Anakin Skywalker himself, Hayden frickin' Christensen. I added the frickin', that's not a part of his name. We also interviewed director Angus MacLean, producer Galen Sussman, and Michael Giacchino from Disney and Pixar's Lightyear. So go check out those interviews. Which is out now to stream. Disney Plus. Yeah.
On Disney Plus. Yeah.
There you go.
You can watch it on Disney Plus. So
again, we've been really lucky to chat with these folks. Lastly, we also have our weekly This Week in Geek episode every single Wednesday, where we bring you the latest news and trailer reactions from around the Geekiverse, with our latest episode where Kevin, Darcy, and I, we sat down and discussed the recent announcement of Destin Daniel Cretton as the director of Avengers: The Kang Dynasty, as well as the most recent trailer for Andor, and we even discussed the recent trailer for the Spirit Halloween movie, which I guarantee will be way worse than this movie. It does not look good at all. But if you want a really good laugh and you want to laugh with us about it, definitely go listen to that episode. That was a really fun conversation. Go give all those episodes a listen and leave a 5-star review if you don't mind. Megan, Justin, thank you so much for joining me for this review. And as we say, good luck and love ya.
Bye.
Peace.